On today's episode of the No Bad Days podcast, we have the super talented Glen Murphy. Glen makes up one half of the British dance group Twist and Pulse. On today's episode, we'll be discussing all things dancing, music, comics, and men's mental health. Sweet. So Glen, thank you for coming on to the No Bad Days podcast.
My pleasure, man.
And thank you for coming in and getting your haircut and your beard done as well, man.
Freshen me up. I didn't look acceptable before. So.
Yeah. No, it's always a pleasure having you in, mate. You got so many great sort of stories and like ambitions and stuff that is so inspiring when you come in. I love having you in my chair because you push me to want to do more and more. And hearing how busy your life is, it's kind of like, right, I can do some more. If he's doing more, if he's not going to sleep till, what time did you guys sleep last night?
Yeah, 5:15.
There we go. So you're burning the candle at both ends, but you're making it happen, man.
Yeah,
so, yeah, thank you so much for coming on, dude.
My
pleasure,
man.
Firstly, I just wanted to sort of jump straight into it and sort of break it into two parts. So first of all, I just wanted to talk about sort of your life before BGT. So like, who was Glen before BGT? What did that consist of?
I was pretty much obsessed with dancing. Like from the age of 11, I kind of like really got into it, started taking classes and stuff. But once I did, like I didn't really look back. It was every day of the week I was at a different class or a different like crew or with friends or just like an event or something like that. It was just something I didn't stop, and it kind of became my whole personality. Like my style was all based on like looking like a street dancer. I wore a cap then. Do you know what I mean? Once I got into that kind of flow, it kind of molded me into that sort of person. I was always dancing at home, that person like at the bus stop, you know what I mean, all that sort of stuff. And that led me into doing it after school clubs, at the weekends, and then going on to obviously go to college, thinking what to do and where I want to go, and then realising dance can actually be something you study at the next thing. You didn't realise there was things like that. A lot of those schools are very like expensive as well. You see them and it's like, you know, big term fees for these performing arts schools. And then I heard about the Brit School, which is free, but you have to audition. But at that time I was so just like all things with dance. It seemed like the most like just made the most sense, I think, like to go there and to like try and go for this dream of like doing dance as like an actual career and see if I can make something of it. So.
And do you think that came from your environment? Was that like wanting to dance, and especially the style of dancing, like you just said then, like in the crews and stuff, like do you think you was a product of your environment where you were from, South London?
Yeah, definitely. I think dance was a little bit of like a sidestep, but again, you find like a whole new community. And I think once I joined, like my first crew was called Vortex, and then all of those guys became like my brothers and my friends, and then they became my social circle. But obviously our social circle consisted of like going to Jump Off, which was like a dance battle event in London. It's like all our things were still themed around dancing, or like even just people's birthdays and things. It was different. The energy was different when you're around dancers because everyone just has that like that little spark. And obviously a lot of them are older, so they've been in the game a bit longer, start doing performances. So everything was a rehearsal. Everything was like looking for the next thing, I guess. And once you're in that community, you just realise how big it is, because that's just South London. Obviously we were meeting crews from like East London, and there was like rivalries, but like good rivalries, like not like in the movies where it's all, you know, it seemed very gang-like in the movie, but it's not like that. It's very less like, oh, I can't wait to do that show because I want to see what they're going to do. And you know, the new films are coming out. It's very much the era of like the You Got Served and the Step Up, and all those things were still coming out in the cinemas, Honey, all of that stuff. So it was very like pop culture like things as well. So in school you had the people that rapped and MC'd and stuff like that, but then you had like the guys that danced or the girls that danced, and I think people like gravitated around that as well, and it was very like a cool thing if you could dance. You know what I mean? To be able to do a move or a moonwalk or something like that.
Yeah, and then obviously did you meet Ash at Brit School?
Yeah.
So then obviously you was a dancer before, you was in your crews and stuff, and then just explain to me a little bit about like the first time you saw sort of Ash and you first sort of had that connection with Ash.
Yeah, it was a weird one because we were both in different crews, and we used to compete at the same competitions but in different categories. So my crew was in the adult category and his was in the varsity. So we'd both win the same competition, but it's in the two different categories.
Okay.
And I was in like an all black group at the time, so I was stood out. I was very much like the white guy in the group, and he was the same in his. So there was this like funny thing of like at events where we'd be like, hey, it's the other white guy from the crew. And it was like that was very much like the culture of it, and like as especially just living in Southeast London and stuff like that, that was very much a thing. So we already had this kind of head noddy, see you at events type thing. So then when we get to Brit School and saw each other, it was just like
You're that guy.
yeah, very natural, just like, hey, got to know each other. And we only studied ballet, tap, contemporary and jazz, so there wasn't any street. So our lunch times were like, oh, let's go, I've got this new song, and you take the dance studio and play each other music, and then that just evolved into making up little bits of routines, and then it just grew, and we didn't even realise what was happening until
it happened.
until it was on BGT,
Yeah, and that's amazing, man. Like, we had Ash on obviously a few episodes ago, and he touched briefly on kind of how you got your name and stuff. So if you wouldn't mind going to that a little bit as well, that's a nice story.
Our name's really random because we both had separate names. Ash was already Twist, I was already Pulse, and we were doing really like small, like open mic night type events, and we were backstage getting ready, and the host was like, "You guys are up next. What's your name?" We was like, I haven't even thought of a name, like, of a
Is this
crew
on
thing.
Britain's Got Talent?
No, this is just like a random like club kind of like open mic thing. And we were just like getting ready and like, you guys are up next, what's your names? And we was like, I'm Twist and Pulse. So he was like, next up is Twist and Pulse. And it only happened that it was a 5-letter word and another 5-letter word. A twist sounds like a move, a pulse sounds like it could have been like Twist and Dynamite, or like we could have had really random names. It could have been Twist and Bob. Like we could have been completely two different people, and that wouldn't have worked. But I think once we heard it out loud, again, we didn't think of it as an act name. It just became people announcing us as Glen and Act, but Twist and Pulse, Twist and Pulse. And then you start to ring and realise it sounds right, it feels right. And then people would be like, oh, how did you come up with the name? It's really cool, like 2 dance moves. And we were like, no, it just happened. Just our names. Again, very much alignment, because we could have been, you know, we had other friends that had like street dance names that wouldn't have made sense, you know what I mean? And a lot of like dance crews, you end up sitting down with a piece of paper going, oh, we could have been called Thunder and Lightning or Smoke and something else. Like you try and coming up with something really cool, whereas Twist and Pulse just felt very, just normal and like authentic to us. You know? Yeah.
And then fast forward to the point where you're getting ready for BGT, the first time you obviously auditioned and the first time you went on it. How did you feel? Because obviously you was doing all these competitions and you must have been a pretty confident lad to be performing in front of people, and then you're walking on stage in front of the whole nation. Yeah. How was that? How old was you at that point as well?
18, 19. So I wasn't scared of anything. Like that was my thing. I was very like, I'd been in an older crew for so long, so all the people I was competing against were mid to late 20s. So I was already in like an environment that was like far beyond what I should have been doing, I guess. I was already going to like jump off, which was very much like what you see in the films, like battling in a ring, like dance battles, very like
scary.
Yeah, scary culture. Like if you go wrong, you get booed, and like it's full on. Do you know what I mean? To put yourself in that thing, and it became very like, I kind of thrived in that space. And I think once BGT became a thing, it wasn't like, oh, should we? It's scary. It was just like, yeah, of course. Didn't really double think it, and also, but didn't see it as what it could have been. There was no like projection of like, oh, if we win this, it's going to change our lives. It's like the thing to do. Oh, that'd be cool. Why don't we go do it and just do one of our dances?
And that's the beauty of youth, right? Is that like when you was that age, you just saw it as me and Ash are just going to go out and just do a dance and let's see if people like it. Whereas the older you get, like you now sitting there, you realise how amazing and what an incredible sort of platform that was for you. But back then, that was the beauty of it, is that you didn't realise that and you were just having fun. And I think personally you can see that in your performances. You don't have that fear, and you're dancing to EastEnders theme tunes, and you're just you don't care. Like what I liked about Twist and Pulse is that you seem like you just didn't care about what anyone thought about you, and dancing to the cheeky girls and stuff. Like there was no kind of, oh God, what are the boys going to think? What are the crew going to think of me? It was like, what's going to make people laugh? What do people want to see? And you was like the epitome of kind of like a British act. And I think that's why you did so well, was because it was like, you were so British and the humour was so British, and it resonated with so many millions of people across Britain. And you probably didn't even realise that at the time.
We wasn't even thinking beyond us too. I think that's why it came across the way it did, because it wasn't a bigger picture thing. I think now, like at the time, we was on the 4th series of BGT, but this was no social media times. This was early Facebook. So like, it wasn't like now, it's like, oh, we should you know, acts always go, oh, we'll do BGT next year because we get on telly and followers, and there's kind of like a market to, you know, get bigger and find like more people to like your brand and follow what you're doing. Whereas we was at a place where it was like, we had no idea that it was going to do anything or become anything. So there was no expectation and no planning involved. Where I think nowadays to go on BGT, it's very like a crew. It's like the thing to do, because obviously if you get on telly, then you get followers and then you get gigs and you get money. And it's like, we didn't have any of that. It was just a fun thing, like signing up to your local festival kind of thing to just perform on.
So what took
stage.
you on BGT? What was the main sort of like pulling power? Was it you applying? Was it them coming to you?
We applied, but we had already done it separately with our crews and with our like. I'd done it by myself. Ash had done it with a different friend. We'd both done it in crews, and then we decided to do it. So it was just kind of like a thing to do.
So you had been on BGT before?
Yeah,
okay.
Twice. And the first time I didn't even get past producer round. The second time I got in front of the judges, got 3 yeses, and just didn't get through to the next round. And it just kind of got to the thing, oh, it's July, it's BGT coming up, I should audition for it. It was just part
Just a
of
thing
like,
to do.
Yeah, it was just a thing that we'd do. There was no bigger plan, there was no bigger picture to it. And me and Ash didn't think we had like something that was going to change the game. It was just like that was what we were doing at the time. All the parents and stuff that had seen us perform were like, oh, like you said, very British, like the audience was laughing and loving it, and we were just like, give it a go, see what happens.
So then, how would you explain sort of the difference in sort of your mental state from Glen, where you're absolutely fearless, you will take on the world, you will dance to cheeky girls and EastEnders, and you don't really care what people think about you, to the Glen that won Britain's Got Talent, champion. What happened in between them years, do you think, that changed within yourself?
I think loads of things. I think the main thing is just life experience, in terms of, as you get older, there's so many things that become kind of like ingrained into who you are, the people you meet. Like, I don't know the poem off the top of my head, but there's a poem I really like that says like, you know, I love this film because of the person that used to love this film, and I eat this food because my best friend's mum cooked it for me this one time. But those are people you don't even speak to anymore. But the person you are now are all based on the experiences you've had. Do you know what I mean? If you're a big fan of Harry Potter or superheroes or whatever, but you was that because, you know, your first girlfriend was in love with it, so you used to watch them with her, but now you love it. And it's like, you don't realise in 10 years time after BGT, all the little things that have kind of like built you up, but also broken you down in different ways, I think kind of created like a new me. And I think Champions just came at like a very tough time emotionally, and like with family, friends, everything was very like rocky. So to have something that was so like such a big deal at the same time, it was very like two complete opposite energies, and trying to balance that was where it became hard, because I was still fearless, I still wasn't bothered about the competition as such, but I was out of focus in terms of like mentally, do you know what I mean? And like the pressure of like going to rehearsals and trying to be focused when your mind is somewhere else is frustrating for someone that knows what it takes to win. You know, when you know you have to be in it, you can't, there's no messing about, you can't mess this up kind of thing. When you know what it takes to be, not the best, that's not the right word, but you know what it takes to do something, do you know what I mean? And you understand, you know, if you're doing the marathon, you know that there's a certain amount of understanding you're going to do something that's hard and it's going to take a toll on your body, that you have to prepare. And I think when your mind's not allowing you to be prepared because it's taking you somewhere else, that's what I found hard. I found it very like...
So what was the time frame between Britain's Got Talent final, the first time you was on it, to the Champions?
Yeah, it was 9 years later.
9 years?
Yeah, 9 years later. And the first,
that feels like that went so quick.
Crazy quick. First like 7 or so, you know, it was just very normal life, gigging, loads of craziness that we were doing, and we were just riding this kind of...
So you was in like twist and pulse mode then?
Yeah.
You was twist and pulse
kind
of thing?
Not thinking about anything else, taking on every challenge, every job we could do, you know, we was learning a lot about the business, how to rebrand, how to like try new things, how to make the business financially better, how to just do bigger jobs and stuff like that. And obviously our lives were changing as well. We were growing up, we were, you know, trying to get a house and a car, and like all those things were starting to come into place. And now it's like, I've got things to pay for. So now the business has to make sense. I think a lot of people drop off because they think, oh, if we just carry on dancing, we're going to be like, it's going to be fine, but it's not. It's understanding where the market's going, what's going to happen. And that's the stuff that we sat down and was like, okay, if there's a new app, social media wise, we were like straight on it and like quick to be, like before TikTok was TikTok, it was Musically.
Yeah.
We were on there before everyone was on there making videos. We got 1 million followers before before it bought Musically. So when we got bought, we already had 1 million followers on TikTok.
Yeah.
But it's because we preempted that and tried to just stay ahead of the game. Same thing with like Facebook videos. We were like so on it with like getting ahead of the game and just being like aware of like,
it's a business.
Yeah, what's happening to like, what's going to keep us in the loop? What's going to keep people wanting to see us?
And that's it's a long period of time to be Twist and Pulse. Like from Britain's Got Talent to the final, to the winners sort of champions. 9 years of just being Twist and Pulse.
Yeah.
And this is something I'm going to touch on a bit later, but it doesn't, from an outsider's point of view, it doesn't really give much space for you to be Glen.
No.
Like it gives you, it's full on, right, we need to make Twist and Pulse a business. How are we going to make money from you? How are we going to, and you always need them people to push you along and help you on your journey. But sometimes when I look at these sort of reality shows and stuff, I always see it as like, it's quite a young person's game. And like you just said then, when you don't have a house, when you don't have a family or a car or not a lot of responsibilities or commitments, you can throw yourself into it. But we're now talking 9 years down the line of doing this thing, and you're now a man, you're now an adult, you're in your mid-20s, coming to later 20s, and you're at the champions point. And if you wouldn't mind going into just sort of, you touched into it earlier, but sort of where you was at mentally at that point, because I know we've spoken about before when you're in a chair slightly, but where was your head at that point? Because for me, it doesn't sound like you was in the same mentally place as you was 9 years before that. So where was you 9 years down the line? Yeah,
because I think it put a strain on my relationships with like a lot of my friends, which I didn't realize until later when things started to slow down and you start looking at it. And I had a lot of friends that were like, oh, you're always busy, man. You're touring and you're doing your thing. And a lot of times I wasn't. And that's what was good about the job was we were earning decent enough to not have to work as much. So we weren't doing a gig every day. We were doing 5 gigs a month, but earning enough of a wage for the month that I didn't have to work all the other days. So I had more free time than what was imagined from my friends, but then my friends would go and do social activities without me thinking I'm off being Twist and Pulse and traveling the world and touring. So it's like it broke up quite a lot of like my friendships early on, and I noticed too late to kind of fix them. So 9 years later, I kind of got to a place where I think I looked around and not as many people that I thought were there anymore. And I've been in a relationship since 2012 up till then, and that we'd just bought a house together just previously to BGT Champions even coming up, and the relationship basically broke up, and that kind of started my spiral of like my mental health journey in terms of like understanding. I didn't know how to process it, and it was more so like, how do I deal with not having somewhere to live, or I didn't have like a base anymore. And because I'd been in that relationship for so long, I also realized I was in a relationship just before that since I was 18. So I hadn't been an adult or a man on my own. So all of a sudden there was this like overwhelming sense of like just loneliness and like a realization of, okay, if I don't have anyone, who do I lean on? What do I do now? I don't have a house, which is a place where I can obviously settle, and I don't have a person, which feels, again, someone you're with sometimes is your comfortable place, your resting place. So once that kind of shook my foundation, that kind of spiraled me into, it became quite toxic in terms of like arguments, and just as all relationships do when you break up, you go through that phase of trying to fix it, but we couldn't quite fix it. I was trying to figure out how to sort out financially what the money meant, what house, we just bought it. It's like, how do I get my money out of here? But it's going to take this amount of time to do that. So in the meantime, how do we make this healthy? And I started sleeping on people's couches, and I'm trying to live out of a case and on friends' couches and go to rehearsals and not say anything about it. Just act like, oh no, it's all good. Like I'm fine. I'm getting on with it. I'm cracking on. And the BGT and that starts coming up and you're trying to prep for rehearsals, but I'm going from rehearsals home to having crazy arguments to then, waking up the next day and trying to sleep in somewhere else. And it was like, I couldn't find any focus and any kind of ground. And I think that's when I first started having like anxiety of like the worry of saying something, or the worry of like being late because I was in an argument and I'd left late now, but now I've got to make up an excuse and lie about where I am or what I'm doing. And it kind of just compounded onto like, the pressure, I think. And I always say, like, for me, the thing that, I don't like to say broke me, but the thing that like really made everything come to a halt for me is just layered pressure. Like, a lot of people have, a thing that they may be dealing with, but I find it personally hard when I can't focus, when I can't really pinpoint like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with, and if I'm not dealing with that, I'm here. But if it's like, I'm not dealing with that because I'm dealing with that, and because I'm dealing with that, I'm dealing with that, for me, it became like the overarching kind of domino effect that then, started to crumble.
It sounds to me like you was trying to be in like 4 different places at once, and from what you were saying earlier, like you've just been on this incredible kind of experience where you've gone out and you've toured and you've done all these incredible things, and then when you've come back home, you want to put your feet on the ground and you're like, what's around me? And you, like you just said, your friends have kind of done different things. You don't have a place to call your home, and then I guess the only person that was there for you from like for a long time was your ex-girlfriend, and then like if that's breaking up, it's almost a bit like, well, what have I got left? Like everything's gone.
Yeah, it's a turmoil. That's overwhelming.
Yeah, you almost like visually, almost like you're like an island kind of thing. You've just been left on your own in the middle of the sea, and everyone's gone kind of thing. And I think everyone can kind of relate to that at points, and it must have been hard for you because then you've got such a massive task to focus on. Literally that next kind of couple of months with the champions and stuff. So going into that, how did you focus? Because obviously you must have focused because you won the whole thing. So
it was a kind of, that's what it was kind of weird thing, because as much as like that was the kind of like starting point, but throughout the 4 to 5 month process of champions, my friend Jack committed suicide. So there was this, he took his own life kind of just before we started getting into like the live shows and stuff. And that was like obviously out of nowhere, and also something that I'd never dealt with before. Didn't know anyone that dealt with something like that. And I also didn't realize how much it was going to affect me mentally when it happened, and the shock factor of it, and the kind of like, just really rattled me, just really kind of like changed my perspective. I was with him so like close to like when it had happened. So then you get into that thing of like, how did I not, obviously you're not meant to see it, but I was going through all those things that people talk about when they, talk about that scenario happening to them, and going through that whilst trying to pinpoint this focus. And then my granddad fell ill at the same time. So now I'm going to the tech rehearsals for champions, and just about as we're walking on stage, getting a phone call saying, oh, we're going to lose him, he needs to come to the hospital. So cancelling, sorry, ITV, all of that. Get me a cab, send me all the way to St Thomas's. It's for me to there, sit by his bedside, and he pulled through, thankfully, through the night. But then I have to show up and I have to go in early the next day now because they've got to retime us. And I'm going in apologising to everyone. And there was just like this being pulled about kind of thing. And I just was struggling, man. I was just really struggling with like balancing that. And also there's this feeling like this. Hi, how are you feeling? Tell us, how does it feel to be back on Britain's Got Talent Champions? And you're like, oh, it's amazing to be back. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, it's not. I don't want to be here at all. I just want to go home. I just want to go and sort my life out, or I just want to go and have a cry or whatever. And it was like, it was the forced, you're being forced, be happy, tell us how amazing it is to be here. It was like, that was like another level. It's different when just in normal life, you might have a conversation with like a very happy friend or like energetic friend that sometimes you feel like you're dragging down their energy because you're not there, sort of thing. But when you're in an interview and you're like,
you're in front
tell
of the
me
nation.
You're happy. Tell us how great it is to be here.
Yeah.
Tell us how amazing it has been for the last 9 years being to us. It's like, there's nothing that wants you to say that anything is good right now. And the biggest thing as well was I wasn't very open about it. So Ash had no idea he knew about my granddad because obviously that's physically like in me cancelling rehearsals and stuff, and he knew I'd obviously broken up, but he wasn't in the know of like how bad like my arguments were or like where I was sleeping, and didn't realise I'd slept in the car before I come to rehearsals. Like he didn't know any of that was going on, and that was obviously another kind of weird energy, because it wasn't just in front of the camera. It was like as soon as I got to rehearsal, it was, oh, how, you know, acting straight away. Oh yeah, all good, man. Straight into rehearsals.
And do you feel like sort of that was almost like a sign of the times as well back then, that a lot of men, that's how we all dealt with things a little bit in a way, like even you then and you now, what's that, 3 years? Like how much you've grown, even just from an outsider's point of view. Like, do you feel like the world's changed, or do you feel like you've changed?
A bit of both, and I think what was hard was like, it was also me as a person. Like, I didn't understand how I was feeling enough to be able to talk about it yet. I didn't understand. I'd never had anxiety before, never had a panic attack before, and I had friends that had them, and I used to be the person to be like, just pull your socks up and get on with it. Like, don't be so ridiculous. Or I'd have a friend who used to go to work, and they used to be like, oh, I had to get off the tube on the way to work today because I was going to have a panic attack, and I just used to be like,
You don't
just
understand
stay
it,
on the train. What are you being ridiculous for? Like, what? Then nothing happened. Why? And then when it happened, I was like, okay, I get it. Because now my body's not, that my mind and my body are doing two different things now, and they can't cooperate. And that's what was hard, especially as a dancer. I've said before, my whole career has been spent on like, I know exactly how to control my body, and like, it's all about coordination and da. So now having a panic attack and I can't control what I'm doing, and I'm shaking, or it's like it froze you. Do you know what I mean? And so then to go into a space where you're trying to rehearse and dance, and in your head you're like, don't cry, or don't, you know, leave the room quickly, go, or, and you're trying to fight that. It's like, it was just such a weird like pulling of emotion.
And I know you touched on it briefly then, and if you don't mind talking about it, but like you were saying about your friend who sort of committed suicide back then, do you feel like you spoke about that and sort of grew through that back then, or do you still feel like that's something you're still kind of holding on quite tight to, even still now, or do you feel like...
I definitely didn't speak about it back then, and I don't think I knew who to speak to, because it's like everyone had different relationships with him personally, and like he wasn't my best friend. It wasn't like, it was just, he was close enough to me to notice the void. Do you know what I mean? And also someone that I looked at as a person that had a certain type of energy, and like, so again, it was a scary thought that he had felt the way he'd felt enough to take his own life, but then also knowing how bad I was feeling and worried about myself, thinking, when do I know that I should say, do you know what I mean? When do I know that this is how bad it feels? Do you know what I mean? And then getting to points where it feels that bad and being like, I haven't said anything, I'm just doing the exact same thing. So now I'm like scared of my own...
You can relate kind of thing.
Yeah, my own mind, and it was very much I could relate, which made it even sadder, because I just think about it now, made me think what he was feeling, to be like, felt that bad. Yeah,
well, recently, like I think I've said to you before, we had a male suicide in our family as well, and it's tragic, man. Like, and even personally for me, and I'm quite open with my mental health and stuff, but I haven't really spoke about it and gone into it and stuff. And like I sat next to him for Christmas dinner last year, and even just that void of like you said, you might not have been like best pals chatting every day and stuff, but it's still a presence that's now void in your life, and it leaves you with so many questions, don't it? Like,
100%.
And it makes you feel, even though you know that you shouldn't feel that way, but you do feel guilty. Why can't I do more? What?
Yeah.
Like, and the person that we unfortunately lost, like, I cut his hair a few times, and I sometimes think, could I have said anything more? Could I have done anything more? And I think everyone can always think that about people that take their own lives, and it's such a big mystery, and you're always left wondering why and what more we can do and stuff. But ultimately, like, it's really hard because it's their decision, and you almost weirdly need to respect it. And
that's why I feel like I had two sides of the coin. One was like, how did he feel that bad? But also feeling that bad and being sad that he had to feel the way, like, wow, this is what he felt like. That's scary. Do you know what I mean? Like, wow, he was going through what I'm feeling now and wasn't saying nothing. And like, we had a relationship that was very much built on like FIFA. Like, that was our thing. We used to play FIFA every night for like 3-4 hours at the middle of the night. But you didn't realize how much you bond in that, because I knew everything he was up to. I knew, he's got to come off early tonight because he's got an interview the next day. And then the next night I was like, how'd your interview go? So I knew more about him than I knew about some of my best mates, because that's what you do when you're playing. You go spend 3 hours talking about life. My girl said this, and you're just chatting, and you're just like, you're going through therapy with all your boys on a constant thing. And it's like, I didn't realize how tight we were and like how much we knew about each other and what was kind of like our relationship. And it's like that group of guys has never got back together to play again since, because it's
too hard.
Yeah, it just rattled the whole group, and I think rattled the dance community in itself, I think. And it's very much a big void still.
I know it's a pretty deep question, but I feel like it's something that definitely needs to be spoken about and heard and asked amongst like the male community. And obviously we're two lads sitting here, and I know it's quite a heavy kind of deep question, and I'm very happy for you to kind of ask this back to me, but is sort of taking your own life and suicide something that's ever sort of come into your head at any point, even if it's not physically going to do it, but just having them thoughts? Is that ever something that's come into your brain?
Yeah. I've been hesitant to say it before, because sometimes it's more of like the feeling of burden, like when everything feels so mad and like everyone's trying to help, and like even recently, like, not that I felt the thing, but the worry that like things would be easier if I wasn't here. And that is the thought, that's the first thought that initiates the going to the next level, or how do you do it? And obviously that becomes a lot darker place. But I think that initial question for me pops up quite a lot, especially when I'm in a very like heavy place and a very sad place. And I feel like I also know that is the question that's scary. So when I think it, I also know that I need to now put something in place, which is why I started going to therapy. Because when I started feeling like that, there was a part of me that always knew I wouldn't, but the fact that when it was low that I was already going, I know it might just be easier. That is like such a scary thought. And it's like, even when you know the answer, it's like, I would never do that to my mum and dad. Like, you have that, but I also know that when things layer, it only takes a silly, last minute decision to change that, which is why I felt like therapy was such a like integral thing for me to like make sure I go and say something to someone. And if I ever get to them places, I like book a session straight away to be like, just go and just air out everything, because it's just a scary place, man.
Yeah, and this is why I wanted to bring it up, because it's when you think these things, you think that you're the only person that's feeling this, because I've had them thoughts as well, and I've had times, not many, but a few times where I've thought, I'm not going to physically do this, but when it starts coming into your head, like you said, that's when I know, like, and that was at the point when I started therapy as well, and I'm like, that's when you know this isn't right. But what I think is really important, why I wanted to ask you that question, is that I think everyone at some point will have that fault, and you are not your faults. Your faults are separate from you, and you can let these faults kind of come in, but ultimately you're the one who's making the decisions. So do you feel like therapy has helped you in that sense to get it all out? And
I think there's definitely like a level, like you said, of understanding that like you can think some crazy stuff even when you're not unhappy or depressed. Like they always say, there's that funny question that people always have, like when they're at a train station, you always think, oh, what if I just jump in front of the train?
In front of it,
But you're not going to do it, but you have the thought, and it's like knowing that thought is different, but it is the same. It is just a thought. It is just the initial thing. You can have the craziest, most whatever thought. It doesn't mean you are that person or you think that is the correct thing to do. Do you know what I mean? You could be angry at someone and think, oh, I'd really love to whatever, but you're
not going to do it.
You're not going to do your action. That's just your brain trying to handle the information. And I think like I'd like to think I'm someone that's quite self-aware, and like I understand when I'm feeling something or thinking something. I've always been like super sensitive. I'm like a full-time crier at films. Like all my friends know that, like if you send me a really nice text message, probably get choked up. That's just the kind of person I am, and I've always been like that. Same in music. Play me a really good song, I'll just cry in the car. could be 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a sunny day, laughing, and I'll still cry because I just feel things very like deeply.
Intensely.
So yeah, I feel it very intensely, and then so things like that, I'm very easily like, okay, this is an issue. This is something I need to sort out, and I can start kind of making that thing. But like I said, some days are just a lot worse than others, and a lot harder to like get out of that space a lot quicker. Do you know what I mean? Especially if you can't get to therapy very soon, and you know you have to kind of deal with those days of loneliness. I'm quite bad with like pushing people away when I get into that space, and like not talking to people or just fobbing people off to just be like, I don't want you to have this version of me.
Yeah.
So I'd rather just tell you I'm not free.
It goes to that thing again if you don't want to burden them, like what you said earlier.
Yeah, and I got some really great friends that are like adamant to make sure that they're like showing that they're supporting you. Here, it's okay, I can deal with it, but like I'm not. But it's how I feel, because I feel like I've got really rubbish energy right now, and I don't want to. I don't want to over. I don't want you to get used to me being this version of me when you already know, like, you love me for the version of me that you met when I was happy.
Yeah.
It's like that feeling for me. I was like, I don't need to start thinking, oh Jesus, every time I speak to Glenn, he's miserable. So it's like I avoid the communication and I avoid that discussion, and it's not healthy. But
I think the thing that, as blokes, I think we need to realise, and as me and Joe when we was driving here today, actually, it was really such a strange moment, weren't it? Like we saw a van, and it was, what did it say on it?
Just something along the lines of like, it's okay for men to speak, or just something as simple as that.
Yeah, it was like men get talking or something, and me and Joe looked at it and was like, this is weird. Like, and it was just such, and it's that thing of like, if you go to the pub 3 times and your friend is a bit down every single time, it's okay. And I think, like you said, you're a sensitive soul, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And like, ultimately, it sounds really deep, but you're still here, man. And like, that's the most amazing thing. And like, the impact you've had on people, you will never recognise and realise, because you're in your body and you're in your soul, and like, you've affected people more than you'll ever know without even realising it, just by being you and just by being your personality. And the void you've noticed from your friend who unfortunately passed away, and my family member that passed away, there will be a huge void. And I think when we sort of step back from sort of our egos and who we are and our character, and I don't want to be late for my rehearsal, can't be late for this, I've got to finish this, I've got to finish it. Actually take a step back for a minute and just kind of be present and like, I'm here, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm actually here, and just kind of take it all in. But it's hard for guys to talk, and that's what this podcast was kind of created for, was almost to show people that it's okay to sit down, like 2 guys to sit down and talk and kind of open up your heart and talk about all the really, really deep, sensitive, emotional subjects that are like really hard to talk about. Like, you've probably had it with your friends, like when you see someone, you're like, yo, how are you? You said it to me today, actually. When you came in, you said, when you said like, oh, how are you? And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. Whereas actually, I wanted to just cry and be like, oh, I'm so stressed, I've had the hardest day. But whereas we need people that we can just go straight in and say, actually, I'm not feeling like that great today. So it's important. And again, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences and stuff, because it's important. And I feel like this is going to change people's perspective, and it's going to do something, whether it's now or whether it's 5 years down the line when some young lad watches it on YouTube. It's gonna help someone somewhere. So thank you, man, for coming on.
Appreciate it. Like I said, it is hard, because even now, after everything I've been doing for my own mental health, and like being someone who's like advocating guys talking, I'm still someone that's really bad at talking all the time.
Mate,
like,
I'm the same.
I pull myself up on it all the time, and I'm like, sometimes I've rewritten a message and been like, why are you lying? Just say, like, stop pretending.
I'm the same.
Say yes to that when you know you can't do it, and it's gonna stress you out more. And it's like, I'm still doing it now, and some people I feel closer to that I can pull myself up on. Some people I know I can just send a text to, just be like, this is how I'm feeling at the moment. I'm trying to be better at it still, but again, it comes with the thing of feeling a burden, and I don't want them to worry, and especially when you know them and you care about someone and you think, oh, there's someone that does worry and it's going to affect their day, and you're like, no, don't give them that, because that's a lot for them to carry. And it's like, I've always been very independent. Like, I moved out when I was 18, I've lived by myself since then, and apart from like having a partner, but I'm so used to carrying everything for myself. Like I've got my mum and me are really close, but I very much like look after her as well, whereas some people still have like their mum looks after them. I'm very much, you know, in my family, just in a different place to other people. So yeah, I feel like I carry a lot. So then I feel like I'm aware of everyone else.
Especially like with your song as well that you brought out recently as well. So you brought out an amazing tune which you played to me before you even released it, which was a privilege. But you released a song which is based around mental health and has an amazing message with it of can't say it, post it and stuff.
Yeah.
But with that, do you now feel like a new sense of responsibility? Because I know I certainly do with No Bad Days. When you're there as the front runner promoting men's mental health, guys, we got to talk. And then there'll be some times where I won't talk and I'm like, I'm a massive hypocrite.
Yep.
And what you've just been saying then, like, do you feel like that? You've just done this big campaign, it's gone viral online and it's been on ITV and The Sun and The Mirror and you've got all these celebrities getting involved with it. But is there ever times where you feel like, hang on a minute, I'm not the best advocate for this?
Yeah, like it's been such a weird process because I didn't really think about how it would feel to be doing the campaign. I just knew the idea of it, like from a creative perspective, it was like, oh, this is gonna work. Like this makes so much sense. It's gonna put it in the right places. It's gonna get the eyes on it. That's exactly what it's meant to do. But I didn't realize the weight it was gonna carry doing it, and like for the first time, I went back to therapy because of doing it.
Yeah.
Because it put me in such a, not in a bad place, but like I was getting so many amazing messages, but within them were, oh, thank you so much. I've my brother or my son, like from women as well, like my brother, my son, my dad, my husband is now, you know, talking to me more. But then the opposite was, what do I do? My brother, my husband, my son.
It's
and
a responsibility.
It was these really like deep messages of stuff that people are going through or they lost someone to it. And it's like, I was every day, I was just reading comments and messages that are like, you know, essays from people that incredible that they felt they could reach out to me, but it felt like such a weight. And I didn't realize like how many days I was doing interviews and podcasts and articles about stuff. And I was saying the word depression and anxiety and depression and anxiety. And I feel sad and crying because it was like, emotional weight.
Draining.
Oh mate, it was so draining. And like I didn't want to ever say that when I was doing it because that was the whole point. But at the same time, it was a lot for me to take on.
But do you know what, man? I think there's more power in like what you've literally just said right now and what I just said a minute ago is like we need to be that role model, and if we break down and we cry and we show that we can still have bad mental health. Like I know we're promoting like you got to talk and stuff, but we need to listen to our own messages and stuff. And I get people that come in here and I love it when people come in and they open up to me and they tell me their worries and stuff. And I had to have a bit of counselling for it as well. And I think I'm actually going to start looking to go back to it. But you take on that burden and you take on that like that role of that kind of like. They're coming to you for help. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then you're almost like, am I qualified enough for this?
No,
like,
exactly. That's what I'm saying. I don't say that I know how to help you. I just think you should speak to someone. But also, they feel like sometimes just letting it off their chest to me is them doing that, which is great. And like, I've got a private Facebook group where we've got like a community of like 70, 80 people that just write messages and people support each other. But like even the other day, I got a message from someone in the group saying they've had a message from someone else in the group who's in a really bad way and they don't know how to deal with it. And I was like,
support each other.
Like, I was like, I don't know what to do either, but give
you know
them the
what,
helplines and the right people to talk to. And I was like, it's hard. It's good that we're there for each other, but it is something that's like, we're all just helping as we go along. And as long as you are trying and doing your best and saying, you know.
But don't you think this shows where we're at as well in society? Is like, there's people like yourself who are out there, you're really trying to make a difference, and you release this incredible song, which is a great song with an amazing message, but also you've started this like movement almost, and then you're like, right, what next? But this is where I feel like we need almost like some more support from higher, like government support or something, where it's like, right, if you're getting people opening up to you, this is where you send them. Whereas you're the first link, you're the first person, you're getting that train moving. Without you, maybe that person wouldn't have spoken stuff. So I think the more people that we can get in the world like you, we're going to have a better world. And I think
Thank you.
it like, think about you from the Britain's Got Talent champion days to now. You were suffering in silence. Like, imagine if you would have seen someone like yourself release a song back then, you could have related to, you could have seen and been like, oh, I'm not on my own here. Like, and I've said this in, I think, every single podcast, and it always gets me when I say it, but I truly think that we become the adults that we needed when we were kids. And do you feel like you're becoming that adult?
Yeah, it's a weird one because I had a conversation with someone else about that, actually on another podcast, about like your parents and just other generations and how you adapt to like fill that space of whatever. And like my dad is the loveliest person in the world, but he's also emotionally like like he doesn't. I haven't ever seen him cry apart from when my granddad was passing away. I didn't even see him. I just heard him on the phone, and it's like he's just been this very like hero figure, and like he just like doesn't have a, I don't know what the word is for it, but it's not that he's emotionless. He's full of love and like he has all the good things, but there's not like that. We've never had those conversations. Like we've never had those deep things, and that's not like him not doing it. It's just hasn't
never come up.
Yeah, it's just never been that thing, and I also haven't given him a reason to feel like I've needed to talk. So there was just never that. He just did everything he could, and I was very happy until I wasn't, and I don't think, obviously by then I was kind of living a very independent life anyway, so it was irrelevant of whether him being there or my mum or anyone else, because I was doing, like you said, in silence myself. So I think what you said is very true, for sure.
Yeah, and going on from what you saying about your dad sort of in this kind of superhero role, which leads perfectly onto your new comic book. So, please explain to us. I'm not going to drop no hints or nothing, but please explain to us what your current venture is you're going into at the minute.
Yeah, well, obviously after doing the song, it was very much like that was me opening up to like being vulnerable and doing something that I felt like, okay, here's me putting myself on the line to like do something I've never done before. I've never put out a song, never sung in front of people or anything like that. So I Made It Out Alive was my kind of open letter to the world of like mental health. And then I'm now releasing a comic called Extra Man with one of my best mates, Jermaine Riley, who created the idea of Extra Man and does all the artwork and stuff of it. And he's basically an Olympic gold medalist who was stopped in a routine traffic accident and with his son, and was shot by a police officer, and his son was killed and he was left paraplegic. And the whole story is how his genius wife forges like alien technology to create him a suit which allows him to walk and become a superhero, but in his day-to-day he spends it in a wheelchair. And like the whole story is very much one leaning into, you know, the racial divide and all the things that are happening in the world, but at the same time like dealing with the disability and being like feeling powerful in one minute and powerless in another, and how you kind of like battle with that as a superhero, and knowing that, you know, being in a chair and seeing someone fall and not being able to help them, but then next minute knowing that you're jumping from buildings and stuff like that. So super exciting, totally different energy, different thing. And for me, comic books has been something from young that have like inspired me and kept me very like my imagination. I think it's something that's, for me, is so like captivating. Like I always say, like I cry at sad films, whatever, but like the epicness of superhero stuff has always like found a part of me. Like I'm an only child, and I spent a lot of time like creating my own games and like coming up with things in my toys and stuff like that. And so now to be able to put like ideas into a story, into a superhero, into a character, and also have the character dealing with real life issues. He's got a disability. He meets a character in the book who has muscular dystrophy, which is something one of my cousin had, and he passed away from when I was young. And it was one of my like, I would say my biggest like founding core things in my life that ever happened, like my cousin, and dealing with someone that obviously was going through a disease and something that took his life, and how like Raymond, our character in the story, deals with that and meets someone else and sees how they live their life and how they find the good things in life, and how it affects their mental health, how it challenges him as someone who was like an Olympic gold medalist doing really cool things and being on TV and has like a millionaire wife who's a super genius, and then is in a wheelchair. It's like it's gonna be such a journey for him, which is his wife's name is Journey, but it's such a journey for him to deal with that mentally and stuff like that. So it's another way for me to talk about mental health, talk about, you know, dealing with trauma and troubles and stuff like that, but in a more, not fun way, but just a different way of imagining it and showing it off. So
did you write the comic?
So yeah, we co-write together. So we create the story and the arcs and the characters, and yeah, Jermaine does all the art. And we're 4 issues in. We just finished a Kickstarter, and yeah, super exciting. It's something different, and it's something that hasn't come out of the UK. Like there's obviously Marvel and DC and all these huge comics that people know, but we're trying to become the first like UK's version of that with our own universe, and Extra Man's our first comic. So yeah,
it's amazing. Like I said to you before, the visuals are absolutely stunning.
Thank you, man.
Beautiful. I've subscribed and pre-signed up for the comic, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to get a little poster up in here as well and show it off.
Sick.
So yeah, it's amazing that that's coming out the UK, and from people like you two who are real people, live the experiences.
Yeah,
you're not multi-millionaires. You're starting it from the ground. And you've started a Kickstarter, and you're having everyone involved in it from the beginning, which is amazing. Like, what comic do you know that you can get involved from day one? Do you know what I mean?
That's exactly how we wanted it to be. We wanted it to feel very like homegrown and like, yeah. Imagine like you met the person who created Spider-Man, like Stan Lee, for the first time, and you like, oh, he was just showing you the first drawings. It's like you could get involved with that. That's the kind of, you know, vision we're not selling, but trying to show the dream, to show like one day kids are going to have the lunchbox and the t-shirts and the backpacks, and you're going to go to the cinema and watch the film one day, and this is your chance to get in on the game early. And like I said, it's more than a superhero story. It's got really like in-depth life things, but it's not like, you know, it's not just about that. It's still fun, crazy, action-packed like thing, and coming after the song felt like the perfect segue creatively for me, because it still means I can get deep with the dialogue and like them coping with the loss of their son, and very like get my thoughts out on mental health in the issue, but make it look, you know, cool, and make it feel like epic and fun for kids and for adults. Like it's got a bit of everything. So yeah, it's a whole new experience.
And what do you think about comics and superheroes that sort of draws you in? What do you think? Because I know as well, like I was mentioning to Joe earlier, you've got a tattoo. Of like a small boy sort of, and his reflection is Superman, right?
Yeah.
And what do you think sort of the meaning behind that is? Like,
I think it's just like one meaning is like seeing the hero in yourself, like of who you can be and who you can become, and like the kid looking at himself as Superman isn't just he'll become, it's just that is who you are to somebody potentially in someone's life. You could be the person that saves them. I've got another tattoo here, which is a lyric from one of my songs that I've written that says, "Start by saving yourself," and it's part of a musical, but he's basically a superhero that's, you know, trying to figure out life, and he's having this conversation with the other character, and they get to this big part where she turns around and says, "You can't expect to save me. You need to start by saving yourself. How can you expect?" It's like you can't pour from an empty bottle. It's that same kind of feeling, and I feel like superheroes have always had. You know, so I use Spider-Man because he's so relatable, and it has the great power comes great responsibility. It's like it's got such a like poignance and power to those sort of things, and you don't realize how much it like how many people in our generation, a lot of the things you know and do is based off of those TV shows or those comics, or you know, whatever things you, whether it be Power Rangers or Pokemon. It's like you pick up so many little things and you don't realize until now. I'm looking back and really getting into the nitty gritty of comics, realizing how much like how good it is for mental health, or how much of an escapism cinema is, and like, you know, people have their different things. Like I use dance as an escape, but it's like superheroes and stuff is something that I think teaches kids from young a lot of lessons that they don't realize they're learning until you grow up. And I think seeing that is epic.
And it goes full circle into what you was saying pretty much at the start of this podcast about you take small things from life and people that you meet along the way, and it sounds to me like you've taken a lot from comic books and stuff, and maybe like what you were saying, because you was a only child and you delved into these comics and the games and the films, and you was in this kind of like, you almost took yourself out of this world and went into like their universe and stuff, and you've taken that into your life as you've gone on, and
Yeah.
it's amazing, man. I love how you've reinvented yourself like pretty much 3 times in a year. Like
Yeah.
it's impressive, man. Like some people do the same thing for their whole life, and you've delved into so many different careers, and you're living proof that you don't have to just do one thing. And
Yeah.
the main reason that I wanted to get you and Ash on separately is because you're proving, and Ash is proving, that you're not just twist and pulse.
Yeah.
And that moment when you first met, and it's like, I feel like you've gone full circle in the sense of like that first time when you done that battle, and you was like, oh well, I'm Glenn and he's Ashley, and then from then till now you've been twist and pulse, and it's almost, from what I can see, you're now slowly transitioning into like, yeah, we're twist and pulse, and it's now you're like, I'm Glenn and I'm Ashley, and you've got your own lives and you're amazing at other things and stuff.
Yeah.
And this is like your kind of like your almost like superhero moments where you're going to do your own things and being who you want to be.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty brave move, man.
Thank you, man. I think that's like so important for people to understand as well, that like we've been going for 13 years now, Twist and Pulse, but we've both changed so much as people, and the only way Twist and Pulse has been not allowed, but has happened and carried on the way it has is because we've had to learn that we have changed and that we need different things from each other and from our own lives, and our dreams may have changed, or what we love now that isn't the same, or where we're at in our lives, or what we see in 5 years isn't the same. And I think there was a time where we hadn't had a proper conversation for so long, and we were in a very like weird limbo, and we kind of lost our momentum. I didn't really know it was because we hadn't had the conversation. I think once we sat down as friends and realized, oh, okay, that's what you're feeling at the moment. You're in that, and you're that place, and I'm like, oh, I really want to explore music. I want to explore this, and it's like giving us the time to do that means the energy we bring back to Twist and Pulse comes from a better place. And before, we did a few projects where, you know, I'd feel like he's tagging along just to do it because I want to do it, and then he'll do it, and I'm tagging along just because he wants to, rather than this is wholeheartedly what Twist and Pulse want to do.
Yeah.
And this is what that's fine that Ash does that, and it's fine that Glenn does that. It used to feel like, oh, that's outside of Twist and Pulse, so why are you doing something so big and so great? But now it's like, no, do it. That's great, because now we can push that, and we can push that together, and like,
which is a flourishing relationship. And if you thought about that in terms of like a boyfriend and a girlfriend, for example, you have to allow each other space to go and do things.
Yeah.
If you're constantly just like that couple all the time, you're never going to grow, and you're never going to be happy, because you're not allowing yourself to go and do things. And like I've been in bands for years and years and years and stuff, and the more you try and tie people down, they don't want to do it no more. So you have to allow people that space. So it sounds like you've got it in a really good place, man. Like Twist and Pulse is, you know the purpose of Twist and Pulse, you know what it does and what it's there for and what it stands for, and you're kind of happy, you're both sort of happy with that. So where would you say, as Glenn going forward, what would be your dream? What's the future for you?
Well, it's hard because when I think of like dreams and future, like I naturally obviously always go to like the creative dream and the creative. But my thing has always been to have a family. Like I'm looking forward to getting married and having a kid and stuff like that. But obviously you have to find the one for that, and I'm in that place now where I've slightly got to a place where I'm like ready to date and ready to try and like start making that a possibility. Obviously I want Extra Man to be the biggest thing on the planet, and I want Twist and Pulse to continue and still be gigging and, you know, creating more things for us as a brand. And just, I think it's so special to have had something for so long, to run a business for so long, and to have a brand that's still alive, that I wouldn't want to lose it, but it may just need to adapt. Do you know what I mean? Because our lives are adapting. But yeah, in life, I just think it's, for now, I'm just focusing on being happy and finding like I'm still getting used to like living alone, because I'm like completely in my own place, and it's like, it's a very different feeling, especially because I'm very much a person that fills my time with my friends, but then you realize when you go home how silent everything feels again. So now I'm trying to like live in the silence more, spend more time playing my PlayStation or like writing music for myself. And it's like, the more comfortable I get in that, the more I know when I meet someone, they'll feel like an add-on to my life, rather than me leaning into someone and like becoming dependent on like, oh, now I've got a new girlfriend. It's like, that's my person. So yeah, my focus is on that, and then I also want to do the Can't Say It Post It campaign from the song in September. I'm kind of come back and do like another big push and do a campaign hopefully with another charity and just kind of team up with other people and try and get the word out, keep the whole blue post-it note thing, keep the visual aspect the same, and just try and get the word going more, and just whatever can come from that, then amazing.
Yeah, it's important, man. You're both doing incredible things. Like when I had Ashley on, like what he's doing for sort of the same sex community, like with parenting and stuff, is incredible, and like what you're doing with your music, and now Extra Man, like the vision you got for that's like incredible, and like the inclusivity. It's a big word. The inclusivity that you've included in that comic and stuff, like you're gonna impact people without even realizing it. And like I said to Ash, like just by being yourself, you're impacting people, and you're creating these, like what you were saying earlier, like when you grow up, there's these small parts of people that you take, and that makes you who you are. And I think you're doing that for people, and Ashley's doing that for people. And I think as the British public, we always knew you was going to be like that, because when we first saw you on ITV and saw you on Britain's Got Talent, you were these two huge characters, and I could never see you two going out without a fight, like whether that's with Twist and Pulse or whether that's making an impact on your own. And I think sometimes you probably beat yourself up because you're not doing enough in that sense, but just by being yourself and putting that message out there and trying, you and Ash are both, I think, gonna continue to smash it. And it doesn't matter what happens in the next few years, just keep being yourself, and I think you'll smash it, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's like, I always say one of my biggest words I think I overuse is like authenticity. And it's like when things are too planned, like that's what I think a lot of people come to me now and they're like, oh, thinking to go on BGT next year, and it's like, this is the act and this is the thing, and I'm like, sounds good and you may do well, but there's something different about when things just align and you find the right person. Like Ash was the right person for me to go on to be Twist and Pulse, and us, we had the right dynamic as a friendship to have withstood, do you know what I mean? Like we're completely opposite people. There's nothing, apart from loving dance and music, we couldn't be more opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of personalities, but there's something about it that just marries so well in terms of our relationship. And I think anyone going forward thinking about like what they're going to do for a job or for life or meeting someone, it's like letting things be as authentic and real and just happening as possible. That's why I find like online dating really hard, or like apps, it's just not a really thing for me, because it's not the same as having an actual like vibe with someone and having that like initial, oh, there's something there. Like that for me just feels more like unplanned and feels like it's more meant to be, and I'm more of a believer in that sort of stuff. So
don't force it, just let it be, kind of thing.
I think
I've actually got that as a tattoo, that when I was sort of about 21, I went for a big phase of sort of trying to force things and make things happen, and like I was really desperate, especially with my band and stuff, like I really want to make it. If we don't make it, we're not going to do this. And there was a point where it was a Beatles song, as cringy as it is, but like hearing that sort of let it be over and over and over again, it's just, sometimes in life you just got to go with the flow and just let it be, and whatever happens, and if it's meant to be, it will happen. So,
and I'm also a big believer, like the more I can do, the more I can open doors for people that I care about. So it's like, rather than like, I think there's an energy sometimes where people like want to try and help everything, but don't have any kind of vision for what that is, rather than just doing the vision. And by doing it, you automatically, like me bringing out the song, had no idea that I was going to do this campaign or anything about it. But by doing it, I've naturally opened up this new flood of like a campaign and people talking, and like, I just had to do the song. That was the one thing, rather than like, I'm going to go and plan and we're going to release and get a team together and all that. It was just a very like standard thing. And then now it's opened up opportunities for me to now bring other people. And I think the comic will do that, and hopefully the team will get bigger. I got another tattoo here that says "Lift as you climb." It's like, you know, the higher up you get in your career and stuff, the more you can bring people with you, and you can lift people up and get them into places of power so that they can do good things. And it's like, the more people that are doing that, like you said, the more people like us that are having these conversations, hopefully is going to create that effect.
Ripple
you know what
effect.
I mean? Yeah, ripple effect, 100%.
Yeah, it's amazing, man, to see your progress from hearing you talk about sort of where you was at that Britain's Got Talent champions, and then you felt like you couldn't talk to anyone, and you was living in your car and sleeping on couches, and now you're on a podcast talking about your mental health and stuff, and you're promoting lads to talk, and you're the person you needed back then. So yeah, it's a lovely journey, man, and thank you for sharing it with us as well.
I appreciate it. I think I think a barber chair and all that has always been a place where, like, if you have the right person, it is a place where you can talk. It is very, like, I always find getting my hair done just like therapeutic, and it's also kind of a, not rebirth, I don't know what the word is, but like when you get a haircut, you feel like a new person. Yeah, it's a self-love thing. It's, all that sort of stuff is very special. So I think this podcast is like such a good thing to have done. The fact that you already have like a vision for it, and you've already, it's not something that you just, again, alignment. You never went, oh, what would be really cool is like barbers that talk to the, like, you've been doing this, like you've been in here talking to people for years. So the fact that it's happened just makes sense. Again, it's very like authentic to you and what you do, and like, yeah, I can't rate it enough, man. It's amazing.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming on as well.
Legend.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, man.